When calculating area on a map, we need to remember that there are two different types of features that might require the area to be calculated. And the first type of feature is a regular feature, and that might be a cultivated piece of land or possibly a built up area, maybe even the actual block of the grid reference, so A3. Whereas the other type of feature could be an irregular shape. So shapes such as a dam or an excavation site or a golf course would actually be more of an irregular shape, and that would require a slightly different method. But what is fundamental to both is that we use that normal formula that you're used to seeing in maths, and that is length times breadth. Now, you cannot measure the length in centimeters and times that by the breadth in centimeters. In map work, you have to convert them first into reality, the length and the breadth, and then only times them by each other. So you must not times them by each other when they are in the centimeter stage on the size of the actual map as opposed to the size of what they are in reality. And that's why I've put a little first place trophy here to remind you that you must convert the length and the breadth into reality first, whether that is a kilometer distance or a meter distance. Convert first and then times. Let's have a look at those in the actual example. So we're going to start off with a regular shape, and the example is calculate the area of block F2 in kilometers. And so what they mean by that is that you need to measure the actual length of this block and the breadth of the block. And the block is determined by the actual grid lines that have made it up. So when you measure your length, we measure from the 1 minute line to the other, and that is 3.6 centimeters. And then we can measure from the longitude minute to the other longitude minute to get the breadth, and that's 3.1 centimeters. That the length is 3.6 centimeters. And that the breadth measured 3.1 centimeters. And the rule says we need to convert first. Now, because it has said kilometers, we need to make sure that we convert both our length and our breadth into kilometers. And to do this, we use the distance method. So we'll times by 0.5 using the shortcut and times by 0.5 there. That will then give us an answer of 1.8 kilometers for the length and 1.5 kilometers or 55 kilometers for the breadth. Now you can times the two because they have both been converted into the reality distance. So 1.8 times 1.55, I'm going to write it out so that we remember the step. And always use your units to remind you what you're using. And that then gives us 2.79 kilometers. And because it's an area distance, we say squared. Our second example was to calculate the area of the southernmost recreational ground in A4. In this example, we need to measure the actual area of our southernmost recreational feature in A4. And there are 3 recreational grounds in A4, and the question asks for the southernmost. So that is the one that is found furthest to the south. And if I measure the length, I get 0.6 centimeters, in fact 0.5, and you've got to measure quite carefully. If you measure the breadth, you get 0.2. The length of the recreational ground was 0.5 centimeter, and the breadth was 0.2 centimeters. And we need to convert these into reality first. The question asks for meters, and so we times by 500. 0.5 times 500 would then give us 250 meters, and 0.2 times 500 would give us 100 meters. Now that they're both in reality, we can times them by each other, and that will then give us 25,000 meters squared. We're now going to have a look at an irregular area example. And the first question asks us to calculate the area of a golf course in C3 and 4. Now, what you need to do, and this is an inaccurate method, but it is a very quick method. We will look at the grid system, which is more accurate, in another video. But if you're short on time, this is a quick method that you can apply. And so what you do is you draw a regular shape on top of your irregular shape. And when drawing your actual regular shape, you will find that you're going to have to include areas that are not part of your landform or area, and not include areas that actually are part of the region that you need to calculate. And so make sure that whatever you are including is a similar size to what you are not including. So what we can see here is that this section has been included in the actual regular block. And that needs to account for the part of the golf course here that was not included. So they need to be similar in size. When measuring this golf course now, we can measure the length of the actual box, and we can work out what the breadth is and carry on with the normal calculations. In this example, the length of the recreational ground was 0.5 centimeter, and the breadth was 0.2 centimeters. And we need to convert these into reality first. The question asks for meters, and so we times by 500. 0.5 times 500 would then give us 250 meters, and 0.2 times 500 would give us 100 meters. Now that they're both in reality, we can times them by each other, and that will then give us 25,000 meters squared. Now we're going to have a look at our irregular examples. And when you're working with an irregular shape, there are two methods that you can apply. The first method is a fairly inaccurate method in a sense that you are guessing. And this is the method that I would recommend you use if you're asked to approximately calculate the area and you need a quick method. The other method uses graph paper, and we will look at this in another video. But the quick method is that what you do is you take a pencil and you will create a border around your irregular shape, but your border will then create a regular shape on top of your irregular shape. So you can see that I have created a red box on top of the actual golf course. And what's important to note is that I've kept the lines parallel to each other. But we have to observe the fact that, I'm just going to highlight that this section of our actual box is including land on our golf course that is not actually part of the golf course. And that this part of the land here that is part of the golf course has actually then been excluded. Okay, so the length of the golf course was then 1.9 centimeters, and the breadth was 0.2 centimeters. And the question doesn't specifically ask us for a conversion into kilometers squared or meters squared. However, because the length is over 1 centimeter, it's a relatively large area, and so let's do this for kilometers. So we're going to take our shortcut times by 0.5 for each of our sides. And 1.9 times 0.5 gives us 0.95 kilometers. And 0.2 times 0.5 is going to give us 0.1 kilometer. Now we can times each of those together. So we can say 0.95, keeping the units, times 0.1. And we'll get an answer of 0.095 kilometers, and remember it's squared. Okay, now we're going to do the second example of calculating the area of the excavation site in D4 in meters. And again, you're going to take your feature and you're going to put a regular shape on top of the irregular shape. Ensure that what you are adding to the actual shape is similar in size to what you might be not including. And it really is a little bit of a guessing game. You can then measure your length and your breadth and then apply the normal formula. The length then was 0.6 centimeters and the breadth was 0.4 centimeters. Because each of these distances is below 1 centimeter, we're going to now do it in meters, and the question also asks us for meters. So we times by 500 for the shortcut, and for 0.6 you get an answer of 300 meters, and 0.4 times 500 gives us an answer of 200 meters. And then if we times both of those reality distances, 300 meters times by 200 meters, we get an answer of 60,000 meters squared. Okay, now often in an exam they will ask you to actually give your answer in hectares, and they will generally get you to do this conversion from a meters squared answer. So let's use this answer of the excavation site of 60,000 meters squared as the example to convert. And when we put that we convert the meter squared into hectares, it's as simple as saying your meter squared answer divided by 10,000. And if I say 60,000 divided by 10,000, I'm going to get 6 hectares as my answer. And sometimes I find students forget how many noughts there are in that 10,000, because you are confused whether it's 1,000, 100, 10,000. And so I like to make up little things to help you remember. And so we came up with the hectic chicken, which is actually a rooster, but anyway. And my rooster has 4 little thingies on the top of his head. And those account for the 4 noughts that are going to be found in the 10,000. And so this is my hectic chicken, who's actually a rooster. And that then will remind you to take your meter squared answer and divide by 10,000 to get your hectares, and that is the 4 noughts. Just a silly little way to help you to remember the exact number of noughts that you need to divide by.